Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fun Friday Ideas with me, Susan, your speech language pathologist. We're going to start getting into executive functioning, what these skills are, and how you can improve them for your children. Executive functioning is a skill that we're born with, but we have to develop it over time. It's almost like a muscle that we have to exercise. When we're first born, our executive functioning revolves around our sensory regulation and very basic functions. However, as we get older, it involves coordinating larger steps to reach a goal. Think about your body as being a corporation, and the front area of your brain right here is the CEO. The CEO is what performs all of the executive functions. That's going to be your planning, your strategizing, your regulation, and other skills that you need to have in order to meet a goal. In order for our executive functioning to develop, we have to have a safe environment where we are given options and we are given unstructured playtime in order to demonstrate our creativity. We also need to have dependable social relationships with our caregivers. We have to know that the people around us are there for us, and they have to also be demonstrating good executive functioning skills and good planning skills. Another important factor when it comes to our executive functioning is going to be our motor, sensory, and communication skills. Now, again, a lot of our kids struggle in these areas, and so because of those struggles with their motor and their sensory regulation and their communication, their executive functioning skills might be hindered a little bit as well. But that doesn't mean that we can't do something about it and that we can't help them and provide supports to improve not only their communication, but also the executive functioning skills that are related to it. As I mentioned, executive functioning involves planning, organizing, and sustained participation towards a goal. There are lots of different skills that go under executive functioning. However, they can be categorized into three main categories: our working memory, inhibitory control, and our mental flexibility. Today, we're going to talk about working memory, and I'm going to give you some examples of what working memory is and a couple of different strategies on how you can improve your child's working memory. So you can think about working memory as a whiteboard in your brain with dry erase markers. And we take that information in, we draw it on the whiteboard, and then we can work with it. As we're taking information in, that process relies very heavily on our attention. If you have any questions about your child's attention or concerns about your child's attention, I highly recommend you talk to your pediatrician about these concerns. Working memory is something that our children are required to have in order to learn, follow multiple step directions, and it plays very heavily in their ability to follow daily routines. Daily routines are something that are fundamental in establishing executive functioning skills. These are great ways by implementing simple daily routines in your day. This is a great way to demonstrate to your child the sequence in order to get goals met and the priorities in which we do things. So sometimes our routines are not going to go the way we planned them because other things of higher priority come up. As I mentioned, we can think about our working memory as being that dry erase board in our head. Almost like, again, continuing with that analogy of the CEO. So imagine your CEO in here, and he's in a meeting, and he has that white dry erase board that he's going to present to the board members with. That whiteboard is the working memory. That's how we're going to present our solutions, and that's how we're going to plan them. It's very important, like I said, that, again, our children understand what to pay attention to in order to get the proper information in the proper way on that whiteboard. Some of our children don't understand exactly how to pay attention to these things and how to get the information on the whiteboard. All the information might be there, but it might be disjointed. So when they try to work with it, they don't exactly work with it correctly because they're not sure how it all relates together. A couple of ways that we can work on these working memory skills in order to give our children the best possible working memory. The first way that we can work on it is through visualizations. Our working memory is a very visual-based skill, and there's some auditory, but it's very sensory and visual-based. Again, it's a whiteboard, essentially. So it's important that as our children are working with materials that we give them a visual representation of what's going on. So if you're reading a story, something that can be very exciting and help them remember key factors is to mime out the actions. Another way that I like to work on this is to not only read the story and mime out the actions, but then mime out similar actions or the same action with different objects. So for example, the other day I had a story that involved feeding animals on a farm. So with the child, we fed all the different animals at the farm. And what would that look like? How does feeding a horse look different than feeding a pig or a sheep? And then think about the food and how you're going to hold it, how you're going to hold food for a horse versus food for a pig that might be a little bit messier. Another way to work on it is, again, rather than changing the objects that you're working with, change the action a little bit. So getting ready for camping, we made a list on the different things that you would need to get ready for camping. And then we acted out how these different things would go under the umbrella of camping. It's important that if you're miming out actions, that you keep the context the same. So either the action is going to stay the same, or the overall activity, the overall category is going to stay the same, such as camping or feeding in the farm animals or what we varied. Another fun way that I like to create visualizations is to, again, draw these stories out. Instead of just thinking about it being a whiteboard, make it a whiteboard and make it going. Keep it going. Keep that story going. If it's a math problem, draw the math problem out as a visual representation. That will help your children understand how to visualize these things then in their head, which will then give them a better way to work with the information with their working memory. Another great way to work on working memory is through having your child teach you. So if your child's learning a new skill, let's say they're learning how to do a certain type of kick in soccer, have them explain to you how to do it. Have them show you, have them tell you, have them draw it out for you. So that way they're teaching you now. This is a huge, huge task for our working memory skills, because in order for us to teach somebody something, we have to really understand it ourselves, and we have to understand what that other person doesn't know about it, and what are the best ways to fill in those gaps and to fill that bridge. The third and fourth great way to work on your working memory are going to be using different types of games. I really like card games, as I mentioned last week. Go Fish, Uno. There's a really fun one called Uno Moo now that uses, instead of the cards, it uses different farm animals. These are great ways to, again, get that working memory going. They have to not only think about what cards are in their hand, but they have to also think about what cards are in the other player's hands in order to make those matches, or in order to put down the cards in the right sequence. Skip Bo is another good one that I like to play. Visual games are another great way to work on working memory, going along with those card games. With visual games, we have things like memory, concentration, sequence. For kids is another great one where they have to find their matching character. And again, get that brain going. What is the character that they're looking for? And then they have to search for it in that array. Another great way to work on that working memory would be, while you're driving around, is see the different license plates in front of you. Have your kids recite them forward and then backwards. Backwards is going to be the real trick for that working memory, because we have to kind of flip things around a little bit. See who can recite the most license plate numbers without distracting yourself too much from driving. Another great way, if your child is reading now, a great way to encourage some better working memory skills is to break out the highlighters, break out the pens, and have your kids highlighting different areas of their readings, taking notes on what's going on, taking notes on the character, the plot, and what's going on within the story. Again, it's great if their kids want to take visual notes where they're doodling the notes instead of necessarily writing out each word. Keep these notes in a way that your child will remember them easier, because that's what these essentially are, Notes and highlighting is a way for your kids to help recall the information later. Other strategies to help with working memory are going to be chunking the information. Just think about how our social security number, our phone numbers, they always have hyphens in them because you remember stuff when you chunk it together. So depending on what it might be, see if you can chunk the information together or come up with mnemonics like Roy G. Biv for remembering the names of the colors in the rainbow. Think along those lines. What are some different ways that you can group, categorize, and associate the information together? Through chunking, through mnemonics, through categories and getting things related to each other. The biggest way to remember something is to associate it with something you've already learned. So think about ways that you can connect the new information with what's already up on that whiteboard. And the easier you can connect it with what's already up there, the easier you can work with it and sort it correctly so you can recall it later to meet that goal. There's also a variety of multisensory ways to help us with our working memory. Orton Gillingham is a reading approach that is multisensory and uses all different facets in order for us to improve our reading skills. Using tangible items with math, I like to make sure that if we're going to use little counting bricks, counting blocks, I like to switch it up too. I like to use coins, tokens. I'll use the monkeys on Barrel of Monkeys. I'll use those for counters as well. I try not to always keep the same counter. I try to vary it because otherwise our kids might get kind of stuck with using the same counter and they might get a little rigid with that and not generalizing the visualization that we're trying to go with when it comes to using tangible items for math. Get in the kitchen, if you have bunch of clementines, use those for your math. Use your apples, cut up your bananas and count those. Cheerios are a wonderful way to learn all sorts of types of math. Another multisensory approach is to make sure you're getting movement involved. So take a ball, write numbers on it, and wherever your thumbs land, those are the ones you have to multiply together or add together or divide or whatever type of math we're trying to learn. Also do different things where you write different types of who, what, where, when, why. And again, wherever your thumbs land, those are the questions that you have to answer about the story. Songs are another great way because the rhythm of songs helps us remember things, helps us pull that out of our brain. It helps us make those connections. So after your child reads a story, have them make a song about it based on Old MacDonald Had a Farm or Yankee Doodle. Have them come up with, they have the tune. Now let's write out the lyrics to it that relate to the story that we just read or the concept in science that we're trying to learn. The more we work with this material and put it into a sequence, into a pattern, the easier it's going to be for us to work with it and understand it. All right, guys. So next week, I'm going to get into inhibitory control. I hope you guys stick with me for that one. That's going to be an exciting one to get into. And I look forward to next week. Until then, have fun and take care. Bye-bye.